Well, one of our users who's new to gCADPlus is having difficulty with this drawing, particularly as when we move from the model space into the landscape plan, what we have is a tiny drawing in the middle. The scale of the floating viewport, which is close to 50 here, doesn't make any sense to our user. So what's the problem? A useful thing to do when you pick up an unknown drawing, such as this one here, is to use the distance command and just check on some known information that's in the drawing. Now, I don't actually have a scale here or any dimension, but what I can do, these are clearly roads that are running through here, so I could use the distance command and I could use the nearest option and I could snap to the roadway there and then go perpendicular to the other side, and I get a value of 8.66. So clearly this design has been drawn in meters, not in millimeters. Now, although you can work this way, all of the simple and easy things in gCADPlus won't work conveniently, particularly your layout scales and spaces. So what I'm going to do is just to drag across here, select everything, and when I do that, I notice that this polyline here has got thousands of vertices in it. That would indicate that a polyline has been exploded, and that's carrying far too much information. I'd be inclined to redraw those, but I digress. Let's pick this zone here and we'll scale it. I'll just pick, say, the bottom of the allotment here as my scale point, and I'll scale. We want to change meters into millimeters, and I'll unselect and then zoom extents. So now I'm sure when we measure from one side of the road to the other, it'll give us 10 meters in this case. So we're now working at a size that helps us. There's something odd here. Main road. Oh, that's a piece of text that applies. Yes, we didn't scale that. That was a leader, and let's get rid of it for the moment because it can always be added a little later. So we now have a fully sized drawing drawn in millimeters. Well, we're told that the site measures some 136 by 250, so let's just use the distance. 136 is fine by about 250. So now we're fine, but notice that I'm shifting the decimal point to allow for that change from meters to millimeters. So let's go now into the landscape plan and see if we can fix it up. What we're looking at here, let's double click in this floating viewport. What we're looking at is just a tiny bit of the site. So what we now need to do is to change the view of our design so that the whole site finds itself within the boundary there. We can display on the layout. And now when we pick our floating viewport, and if we look over here in the properties box, the viewport scale is about 2,500, so that's clearly much higher than we need to work with here. So let's double click again and come in like so, and we're reducing the view of the site and display that on the layout. And I'll just double click in there to double click there. I'd be inclined at this stage, when you're playing around with things such as scale, I'd make the floating viewport, give it a colour so that we can select it easily. So now when we pick the floating viewport, we've got a view scale of 1, 2, 4, 3. I'd be inclined to dive in here now and change the Layouts Manager from a landscape view to a portrait view. And we can do that on the fly, because you can just pick our corners there and down. I'd be inclined to take polar off at this stage and double click. So I'm now getting to a much more reasonable scale, I would think. If I look at that viewport there, we've now got a scale of 800 odd. So 1 to 500 might work, 1 to 1000 would work quite well on this site. Don't forget that you can have multiple layouts and show your location plan, and you can have multiple layouts on one sheet. And in this case, I'd probably be inclined to scale this group by at least 50% and then move that group back onto the bottom of the sheet. I'll probably set that maybe at a fixed scale of 1000 and unselect all. So now we have a 1 to 1000 view on this sheet. If we want bigger views, that's relatively easy to set up. Well, I've gone to Format and then Layout and set a new A1 sheet, and I now have 2 floating viewports. The first, the one on the left, is set to a view scale of 500. I could make that fixed if I'm totally satisfied with that. And over here is a location. So all the roads leading to the property show. If I come back here, I've noticed one thing, and that is that this is a polyline with, I'm just looking to see if it's got a width. No, width is fine, but it's got a transparency set at 100. I'm going to change the colour. That's clearly going to be some water. So what I'm going to do is pick it and change the colour and use true colour. And I'll pick a blue that would work, bluer than that. So this colour similar to the water colour, and we'll go OK. And we'll make its transparency, in fact we'll give it no transparency by changing that to 255, and we might give it a border and make the border colour 254 to make it stand out a little more, and then I'll modify and match the properties of this one to that one. Now you might choose a darker colour, but using colour without applying any transparency means that we can go to our landscape plan and zoom extents. We can change, let's imagine that it's finished and ready to go, and we've got our logo and all our information, and the trees and shrubs and design has been done. We can, and we'll make that those colours 255. So there's our sheet. We could put a rectangle in, say from here to here for a border. We could swing back to our landscape plan. We could select that title block information, copy it to the clipboard, come back in here and paste it from the clipboard and pop it in. There's our A1 sheet all ready to go and print at high resolution. If you use transparency, you won't be able to print to a cute PDF writer or a high resolution PDF. You'll have to use File and Save as a PDF, which is our own custom tool that tries to get around that particular problem. So this was a complex little project. One thing I neglected to say, the drawing units have been set to meters for when you are inserting some content, so I'd bring that back to millimeters. In other words, with gCADPlus, just draw in model space at full size. If you're working in the metric area, use millimeters all the time. Forget about meters. If you get a drawing from a surveyor, scale it up straight away, and where you are playing with colour, stay away from using transparency.